Good morning and welcome back to Miniature Monday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to be continuing our look at the newly released miniatures from Catalyst Game Labs for Battletech. Specifically, we're looking at the Battlefield Support Pack of Battle and Fire Lances. Now, these represent four different vehicles that are given in pairs of two for use in your games of Battletech. It does also include the cards for Alpha Strike and also the new Battlefield support cards, which allow you to use a little bit more simplified version of vehicles in your games of Battletech without having to use the full Total Warfare rules for those. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the four different miniatures that come in the pack. We're also going to compare it to some of the original art that was released for these miniatures, from its earliest inception to the more recent Ill-Clan styling of these particular vehicles. Now, all of the art does come from Sarna.net, which collects the art from the various books that have been put out over the years. But we'll get into that here in a minute. So before we get started, do make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of tabletop gaming content, whether it's miniatures, board games, role-playing, or anything in between. I'd love for you to come along and see what we have to share. In addition, there are links down below to Amazon and DriveThruRPG. They are affiliate links and do help out the channel if you choose to use them, but it's not required. We're just grateful that you're here regardless. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at our first vehicle, the Manacor. Now, overall, I first off, I like the design. It looks like just a good old school tank. This particular miniature, though, is a little rough. A lot of the detail seems lost. Parts that I would expect to be a bit sharper, unfortunately, aren't. I'm not sure if it's just a bad cast or if it's a mold issue. If you look at the barrel as it's coming around, spots that look like they should be a lot sharper in detail just kind of blob together. Overall, I mean, it's fine. We're dealing with 6mm miniatures. But it does kind of kill some of the excitement. On this particular miniature, also because the turret is a lot more complicated than I've seen in other miniatures. I'm also seeing a lot more noticeable mold lines. Usually they've done pretty well at keeping the mold lines to a minimum, but these are definitely showing up a lot more noticeably, which definitely is going to affect painting. You're going to have to make sure that you clean those up, and because it is a softer plastic, it's not like your typical model plastic. It's going to be a little bit harder to work with, so just keep that in mind if you decide to pick this set of miniatures up. Overall, though, it's a fine miniature. Like I said, it just looks like what we imagine a tank. Tracks, big gun barrel, and maybe a couple of accessories on the turret. So I do like that. All right, now comparing it to the art, here's our original piece from Tech Readout 3026. This did get one of the, while not every piece was a color piece, many of the original tanks were done in color. So I want to say about a third to a half were done in color, and this was one of them. You can see some of the design that's been kept. Like this particular sloped piece in the front does still show up on the miniature as well. The barrel is significantly redesigned, but then we still have our SRM and LRM racks on top of the turret as well. Now, this is the version from, I believe, 3039. Yes, tech readout 3039. So they went with obviously a bit simpler design. There's not really any shading. I mean, a couple of small pieces of shading, but not like we got in the original piece. Uh, but it is definitely a bit cleaner for showing off the LRM-10 and the SRM-6. I do like the barrel on this one. It does seem a little bit short, but the actual design looks a bit more correct. We then also have this little turret here on the front track, which I believe is a medium laser for the weapons loadout. And honestly, okay, yeah, so the miniature does not have this little mini turret. It does have a weapon system kind of built in right above the tracks, and you can see that there just underneath the SRM-6. Then we have this version from Tech Readout 3058. Again, Dwayne Luce coming in. Definitely a different design. I mean, you can still see some of the pieces. You've got the turret with the LRM-10. You've got the main barrel for the PPC, but everything else looks pretty different. So kind of interesting, especially when you consider it was the same artist doing both pieces. We then have a version from Camo Specs Online, the Steiner Royal Guards Manticore. And then finally, we have the Ill Clan version. So essentially, this is the vehicle that was turned into the miniature. Overall, it looks fine, but you can also tell some of the spots where it should be a bit sharper. But the miniature itself, again, kind of came out a little blobbed. So a little disappointing on that, but again, at a 6mm miniature, I'm not super worried. So that is the Manticore. All right, now next up we have the Videt, a medium tank sporting an AC-5 and a machine gun. Obviously, this guy looks like he is a small, fast tank. So even though he's not necessarily coming in as a heavy hitter, it definitely looks like it's going to, come at you with some speed. The miniature, similar to the Manticore, it does have some of those soft pieces, some more noticeable mold lines, but overall, I think this one actually came out really well. It's got some good detail on the forward piece of the AC-5 where you've got the venting, and the fact that those came out rather clean. The armor plates are actually fairly detailed. So far from the vehicles I've been seeing, they're a bit more muted and blobbed, but overall not a bad design. I like what they did. I think the antenna on the back of the turret, while it does feature in the art, I probably would have gone without it, because it's just too thick for an antenna. I mean, maybe giving us like a post where you could put in like some wire or something would be better, but this just looks a little off, being as thick as it is. But overall, I mean, that's kind of a nitpicky complaint, which is sort of what all of my complaints are so far. Overall, I like the design of the miniature. Now, when we compare it to the art, we've got this original piece from 3026. It still gives kind of that speedy look to it. It doesn't show off the sort of hollow section underneath the hull and between the tracks, as well as you can see on the miniature. But then we get this piece from MechWarrior First Edition. So kind of implies that the Videt is sort of like an old school. It was one of those. There was a French tank in World War II that was like very, very small and barely fit like two people. So this seems really small, but maybe it's accurate. I don't know. But again, it's still nice to see it, colorized a little bit, trying to give us some perspective on the particular tank. It still looks, big and speedy, but it also looks like there's a third track, down the center, which they definitely took out in the newer art. We then get this version from 3058, which looks like it's sort of from the back. It does not look as speedy as I would expect, but I do think it's kind of interesting that the turret, is about as big as the AC5 or the main gun itself. So interesting little design. I like Dwayne Luce's style, the way he draws the armor plates. So it's a decent drawing. Especially for one of the later books that he worked on. We then have this version from Camo Specs. Obviously a very simple paint job, but still much closer to that original piece of art. And then finally we have this from the Ill Clan version. Again, they went with the large antenna here on the back. I don't know. It just seems rather large and out of place. But you can see the medium laser here on the front, or at least I think it's a medium laser. No, it is a machine gun. So the machine gun here on the front, AC5 in the turret. Other than that, it looks like the miniature. It looks like it's kind of got that, high hull, so still open down underneath. But as usual, it's one of the Ill Clan pieces of art, and outside of the fact that they all look like they're out of the same factory, I do like the nice, clean, properly proportioned designs. So there we go, the Videt. All right, now finally we have the missile carriers. Now I've gone ahead and I've put both of the designs up because essentially the only difference between the miniatures is the turret itself. For the LRM carrier that we see right here, you get 3 LRM 20s, and for the SRM carrier that's coming around, you get 10 SRM 6 launchers. Now, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting about this particular pack is that they actually give you replacements for all of the versions. So if you want to take just SRM carriers, they give you 2 replacements for the LRM carriers. If you just want to take LRMs, well, you get replacements for the SRM carriers. Other than that, the hull is identical. It's the same piece, so there's really no difference. Now, from a design side, that makes sense. You don't need to change the hull if the only thing you're changing is a turret and what is contained therein. But when we look at the art, I think it's kind of interesting because of how it's developed. So this is the original 3026 SRM carrier. Obviously, fairly plain, fairly generic hull. Obviously it's nothing to write home about. And the SRM 6s are done in, pairs of 3, as opposed to a single launcher that actually looks like 6. We have this version from Camo Specs from the Lao 4th Tau Ceti Rangers. Then we have this version from Ill Clan. So you can see they've changed it up to make the launchers all appear to be 6 missiles. You can count. They're all 6 missiles, but it, instead of being 2 3 missile launchers for the 6, it is drawn in a way where you can tell that it's all, that there's 6 missiles per launcher. Now for the LRM carrier, you actually got a bit of a different design compared to the SRM carrier. It's not while it's pretty close, it's definitely not the same vehicle. Um, and then especially when you go to 3058, again, looks very, very different. Also the count is off because these are 12 packs on either side as opposed to 20 packs, and technically there's nothing that's 12 packs. So um, maybe this is just a generic missile launcher design that he did. I don't know. But we then get this for Ilclan, which matches the turret design that we have. So overall, again, they're missile carriers. They're not supposed to be fancy. They're not supposed to be exciting, but they still look good considering the art that they're sourced from. For the LRM carrier, I like that they've got essentially, I'm going to call this the radar display, or transmitter, receiver, both, whatever. Um, and again, to capture that in the miniature and it all comes off without losing a whole lot of detail, I think is really good. So, obviously, the vehicles are a little bit simpler as far as their design goes. I like that they do come in pairs, so it at least gives you some variety out of the pack, whereas but not too much variety. Where if you'd want pairs, it would be complicated to collect them. So I think they made a good decision on how to pack these up. So overall, this last pack of the Battle and Fire Lances, they're good, solid choices. They could easily proxy for any other miniatures because you do get vehicles that look like just old school tanks. And let's be honest, who doesn't want to put some more missiles out on the field? So overall, it's a really good selection. But what about you? Have you picked up the Battle and Fire Lances? Are you going to use them in your games? Do you use them for Alpha Strike or just as the new Battlefield support option? Let us know down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.